and I continued applying. And then all of a sudden, like interviews, there was a deluge of interviews. I had like 9 interviews in like 7 days, and I said, like, this is my opportunity. I have to convert at least one. And luckily, I managed to convert it into a full job interview. An offer.
Hi guys, this is Sandeep Khaira and you're watching Conical Education. Today I have Vinayak with me who got the job in Germany. So he will share his experiences, how to get a job in Germany, what skills you can work on to get a job here, and he will also share with us his interview experience. So let's talk straight to him and gain a lot of information from him today. Hi Vinayak, I welcome you on my channel. So I'm really happy to have you. So first of all, can you please introduce yourself very briefly about where do you come from, your origin, what kind of profile you have, and some other details, whatever you want to mention.
Hi Sandeep, thank you very much for the invitation to your channel. So guys, I'm Vinayak Chuni. I'm from India, born and brought up in New Delhi. A little bit about my educational background. I studied electrical engineering from Punjab Engineering College, University of Technology in Chandigarh. And post that, I have been doing a bunch of things. So I did a master's in finance from Rouen Business School. And then I worked a bit for 8 months in European Aeronautical Defense and Space Company as a corporate finance analyst. Then I did another master's which was a double degree between University of Bologna and University of Munich, where I studied financial mathematics. And post that, I worked a bit in Munich at a Wirecard. And then I decided after 8 months to do a PhD in statistics at University of Bologna. And then I applied for a job seeker visa and moved to Munich. That's a little bit about me.
Yeah, that's really nice. You definitely have a great background, and you have multiple master degrees and a PhD, and then now you are working as a software engineer. So that's really nice. Okay, just one quick question I have here, that you mentioned that you studied masters and then PhD at University of Bologna. So just to clarify for the audience, it is in Italy, right? University of Bologna.
Yes, University of Bologna is in Italy. Yes.
Yeah. My next question is, what are your core skills along with the technologies you have worked on, and what kind of technologies you are expecting to work in this new job which you are going to join now in Munich?
Okay. So, I'd start by saying that I do not have a lot of experience in software development, and neither do I have any formal training in software development. So I would say, like, my biggest core skill is my problem solving skills. I've always been a good problem solver, and especially with the PhD in statistics. Even though the PhD I did is in statistics, but I was mostly working on very hard theoretical mathematical problems, and like working on hard problems and producing papers has helped me develop this core skill of problem solving. Nevertheless, speaking of technological skills, after I finished my PhD or submitted my thesis in 2019, I developed skills. So I joined as a full stack developer, and my company was nice enough to let me they gave me 1 month to prepare the technologies. So I worked with Angular 8, HTML, CSS, TypeScript, and JavaScript. I also have been programming in Java during my master's degree, and I have been solving like little problems on leetcode.com. And I've been mostly working as a front-end developer, and I was, for the last 2 months of my employment, in Promethea, which is a financial consulting company where I was working in Bologna. I was also working a little bit on testing back-end APIs in Java. So this is a little short summary of my skills working as a full stack developer in Bologna.
Oh, that's so nice. And I see that in just 1 year of work experience as a full stack developer with this employer in Italy, you have learned so much skills. And you said one point I really liked what you said. What is important are the problem solving skills. I totally agree with you on that. And you mentioned that you had the PhD degree and you had the master degree, which was totally unrelated to IT and software. but still you got the job just because of your problem solving skills in Italy. And then you learned those skills, and your employer had faith on you, and then finally you worked for a year, and now you will join the employer here in Munich, so which we will talk about in more detail further in the further questions. My next question is, how did you come to Germany? You were working in Italy after finishing your study between Germany and Italy, and then you are working there in Italy for 1 year as a software full stack developer. So how come you are in Germany now and going to work for this new employer very soon? So can you give a little bit detail here?
Yes. So, I mean, I had always planned to move to Germany eventually, because I mean, when I started in Munich, I really liked the city of Munich a lot, and I also made a lot of friends. Nevertheless, for me, doing a PhD and getting like this highest degree that people can get was really important, because at that moment in my life in 2016, when I quit Munich, quit Wirecard and left Munich, I really wanted to do a PhD and like learn mathematics and go deep and do some research. But eventually, like after 3.5 years of research and publishing 2 papers of high quality in international journals, I decided it was time to move on. Unfortunately, COVID made a big problem out of this, because my
Yeah.
plan was to work for 6 months as
Mhm.
a full stack developer and then move to Munich. I thought I was already ready to apply for jobs in Munich after 6 months of training, because I worked really hard and I learned the core skills and I already had those problem solving skills. But like because of restrictions in Italy, there was like a curfew, nobody could go out, all the embassies were closed, so it was almost impossible. But then like I got this lucky break in the months between June and August, when like things started opening up. So I applied at the German embassy in Italy, and I was a bit lucky because they open applications only at 12 o'clock in the midnight, and it's open for like 30 seconds, in which like people all over Italy are trying to make an appointment. And once I got really lucky, I would say. I tried for 1 week every single day, and I got an application and I applied for it. And then I moved. So I think I got the job seeker visa on the 14th of September. I finished my contract on the 15th of October and moved to Germany on the 16th. And I was also like during this period from 16th of October to, until now, until the 7th of December, I was also employed at the University of Bologna, working as a contractual professor and tutor in several courses. And then I was applying for jobs simultaneously in the time I had.
Okay, so you came here in Germany on job seeker visa, and
Yes.
then you started applying for the job here, and finally you got the job now. Can you give a little bit details on that?
Okay, so I moved to Germany on the 16th of October. So that was the first day of my job seeker visa. And in the beginning, I was not really serious about job applications. As I said, I was teaching 3 to 4 courses, 2 courses as a lecturer, 2 courses as a tutor, and that was really demanding, because online lessons you have to prepare like a lot of things. In a normal classroom it's very different. So it took most of my times. Nevertheless, I still started sending some applications. I was quite lucky and I got like a couple of interviews, but since I had never prepared and I was not expecting to get some interviews so quickly into my application. So I got like an interview on the 23rd of October at a small startup company. This startup company had like 5 to 10 employees, and I failed evidently because I was not prepared.
Mhm.
And then some more interviews started coming up. I had an interview at another company 1 week later, and then for a month there was nothing. And
Yeah.
it was an extremely disappointing period, because by then I had also started applying and preparing very seriously for the interviews, but I was not getting any interviews. And then like suddenly I kept on following Sandeep's advice, which through I've been following a regular follower of his channel since the last 1 year, because I'd already planned to move after the end of my PhD. And like he said that you have to continue applying, and you just cannot give up. And for me that advice was very useful, and
Yeah.
I really made a lot of effort to like stick to a schedule, stick to a process, and I continued applying. And then all of a sudden, like interviews, there was a deluge of interviews. I had like 9 interviews in like 7 days, and I said like this is my opportunity. I have to convert at least one. And luckily, I managed to convert it into a full job interview. I mean, an offer, yeah. So that's a little bit about the interview experience.
Yeah,
Of course, I have not gotten the details. If you have some questions, I'll be happy to answer.
definitely. Just one point, I'm really impressed that you got the 9 interviews, and and the tip that you gave, that person has to stick to the, like, the person has to be consistent, keep on applying, doesn't matter, expand the network, and then you can see the results here. 9 interview calls is a lot, big hell lot of number. People don't get these number of interviews even they are in Germany. I tell you, there are some exceptions. I had an interview with a guy earlier who got 20 interviews, who attended 20 interviews in 3 weeks time. But again, these are just exceptions. So I'm really impressed with that. And again, it goes back to how much effort you are putting into your application, how much effort you are putting into your cover letter, your CV, and how much consistent you are, and then how much you are developing your network on LinkedIn or Zing. And then, so these are the ways. So you just have to continue. Yeah, that's really wonderful, I would say.
Sandeep, I would also like to mention, like for me, what was really important is like, you were talking about the importance of CV on your website all the time, and like I didn't take it seriously in the beginning. So for me, it was like before I came to Germany, as I said, even though I was not preparing, but I randomly started sending my applications in Italy, and I realized that like with a bad CV, I would get no calls. Then I
Yeah.
started tweaking my CV, like. To follow the best practices, like the practices you had mentioned, and then like I changed my CV and I saw like it was a magical transformation. So a bad CV, it's better not to send applications with a bad CV. It's really important that you focus on the CV, and of course, like in Germany, cover letters are also very important. So I spent like a couple of days fine tuning my cover letters, and I think like that is really important to convert your applications into interview opportunities. I mean, otherwise you can send like hundreds of applications. So last year I sent 198 applications and I got nothing. I'm
Yeah.
talking about last year. I mean, I last
You
year
mean
was
2019?
yeah, 2019, because I'd already started thinking about programming. That was like before I landed up with my first job in Italy. So I
Okay.
spent a lot of applications, but then if you change the CV, like it's like magic, magical things start happening,
Yeah.
small. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
why it's important you listen to the experts.
Yeah. One point I want to mention here, because now we are on the social media, we have the every company is taking online applications. So CV is not exactly now CV nowadays. It's more of a sales page. So if you think in that way, you connect your CV, you consider it as a sales page and connect with the opening, then definitely it will make a big difference for you. Definitely. Okay, let's move on to the next question. Do you speak German language, and what is the business language at your workplace?
Okay, I speak a little bit of German. So since I arrived, I mean, I learned a little bit of German in 2014. I did an A2 course at LMU when I was a university student. But since I'd never done A1 and I thought I was really smart and I'll do A2, it was a mistake. And I never finished A2. Nevertheless, I could like, but then I moved to Italy, lived there for 4 years. So I always spoke Italian, never got the chance to speak German. My level was not high enough for me to remember. So I forgot like most of the things. But then when I arrived here from on the 16th of October, I started doing some German lessons. There's some very high quality lessons on Udemy. And yeah, so I know a little bit. Ein bisschen Deutsch. But no, in my company, we do not need any German. So it's quite
Okay.
expensive.
Okay, nice. Yeah, that's good. And yeah, definitely. So there are a lot of employers who let you speak in English, but yes, they prefer that you also learn German. That's true. It takes me to the next question. Is learning German necessary to get a job in Germany? So can you explain that?
Okay. I would say not. I would say not really. It depends like how skillful you are. If you are a very skilled engineer, if you are really good, like for example, your core programming skills are really good, I don't think there should be a problem. Of course, there are going to be some companies. In my application process, I applied, and I would get an email. So I applied to job positions which were all in German, but they had not mentioned that they require German. I would send a job application, and they would reply saying that we will be glad to invite you for a first interview. Uh, Please note that our team works in German, so it is important that you have at least a C1 level. It happened with me. It happened to me with like 4 or 5 companies where I had applied and they were interested, provided my German was good enough. Nevertheless, I think like the tech scene in Germany is like big enough, and they have a lot of companies which are ready to welcome people with just English skills. Of course, as long as they have the right tech skills.
Okay. Can you, because your experience is like 1 year experience, it's not so much experience, and you got the job. That's a big achievement, I would call it. So what you just said definitely is totally applicable to people who are so much experienced. So any kind of tip you want to give to people who are less experienced?
I would say like focus on your core problem solving skills. Get good at solving one language. I mean, in my experience, I've met people who have been programming for 5 years. So in my previous company, I was working with a person who had 17 years of experience. But experience does not, there's not a one-to-one correspondence between experience and how skilled you are. I thought that in 1 year I could do much
Yeah,
better than he could
yeah,
in things
yeah,
I was working on. And
yeah.
I think you should focus on your core skills, and maybe focus more on your problem solving skills, as I did in my interview process, than talking about experience, because you don't have the experience. That's my
Yeah,
take.
just one point you mentioned, really interesting point. You said that okay, it if you carry 1 year's experience and if you carry 10 years experience, the important is definitely experience is important, but it is also very very important what you have learned, what skills you built up in that years of experience, whether it's 1 year's experience, 2 years, 5 years, or 10 years, because at the end you have to crack the interview and you have to meet their expectation. So I would say experience in some of the at some places experience is just a number at some point. So your skills matter, but yes, to get the interview calls it has the impact, but then you once you get the call you have to crack the interview, which comes through once you have the skills. Yeah,
Absolutely.
it's a really really great point, I would say. My next question is regarding your skills, as you have talked about it. So can you tell us how is the job market for JavaScript and other related technologies?
And I think that in Munich, especially where I've been applying, and in Germany in general, like Berlin, for example, there are like lots and lots of job opportunities as front end developers, back end developers, and then of course even full stack developers. And then of course there are some other jobs like they just ask you for JavaScript skills, because these employers expect that you, or maybe they have their proprietary frameworks, and if you have like strong programming or JavaScript skills in general, like you can learn these frameworks in a couple of months and get up to speed.
Can you tell us what kinds of jobs available in the market related to full stack developer or front end developer or back end developer? Just briefly, like what kinds of jobs are there? What people can look for?
In my experience, like on the front end side, which is where I was primarily applying because of my experience in Promethea, I worked for 10 months as a front end developer and only 2 months working on back end technologies. I thought that learning React or knowing React is a very valuable skill. Even though I was an Angular JS developer when I was working in my company, I realized that like 70% of the jobs would like you to know React from a front end viewpoint. And if you do not have like React on your CV, or if you're not worked with React, then this can be like a big roadblock. And this is a roadblock I faced in my in the interviewing process, in the interview applications, because a lot of applications required junior React developers, and I was applying for them, and they would immediately reject my applications just because I didn't have React on my CV. So if you know React, it's a very popular technology and could be very useful. Then Angular JS, there are some jobs, but I think like not as much as like maybe 2 years ago. React is coming really strong, and I saw that there are some jobs or a lot of companies which are moving also to Vue.js, which could be an interesting technology to work on. Then on the back end, as I said, I have not been doing back end development. So I didn't really apply to a lot of back end jobs, but I applied for like some back end jobs where they just focused on like the JavaScript, knowledge and problem solving ability. Um, what else? I would also like to mention that SQL, for example, is a very important core skill. You don't need to know like a lot about different databases. As long as you know one database well, it's not so hard to move from one to another.
Okay, but one point I noticed here, you said that okay, definitely now you are going to work as a backend developer in the new company, right? So that's a great learning for the people to know. Okay, if you have your concepts clear, you are applying them properly, then employers are interested to hire you for the technologies, for the skills which you don't have, but still they want to see your approach, how you code, how you deal with the problems, and like you insisted earlier, that problem solving skills are really really important. So definitely, you worked as a front end developer before, and now you are going to work as a back end developer, and you are building up your skills now. The time you have now, so that's really great. My next question is, what preparations did you do to get a job here in Germany?
Okay, so well, I think I did quite extensive preparations. I mean, ideally, I should have started preparing even before I moved to Germany, like when I was working. But let's say I was not so foresighted, and all I did was move to Germany and like started teaching, and then I started learning some JavaScript, like core concepts. Of course, there's a difference between programming in a company and like preparing for interviews, because in an interview, when you're programming for a company, you have to write the code, but like when you are actually interviewing, you should be able to coherently explain the concepts to the interviewer, and that takes a little bit of practice. So the resources I used was, in the beginning I started with these medium articles, but I would suggest that these medium articles can like be a big waste of time, and I wasted a lot of time. So I would advise you against it, because one article takes you to another article, and and you lose track of what you started with. So make some precise goals about like the core concepts of JavaScript that you need to know and that are supposed to be asked. So for example, like the this keyword in JavaScript is very different from say Java. They have like some interesting features like arrow functions. It's important that you really have a good understanding of these things, and for that I followed the Mozilla Development Network documents, which I strongly recommend to anybody who's preparing. And I also continued solving problems using the JavaScript programming language on leetcode.com. And this was also very helpful in some of the interviews where like they asked me to do some live coding. For example, like I had this interview at this company and they asked me to validate a Sudoku. It was a long interview, like 2.5 hour interview. And like at the end of 2 hours, they said like, okay, then now you have 30 minutes. We had a nice conversation. I'd like you to solve, like validate this Sudoku. And, live coding is something nobody is comfortable with, because you are under pressure, you have expectations, it's a strange environment, somebody is looking at you and like you're coding. So
Yeah,
you really have to practice.
yeah,
You really should be confident and have this ability to solve problems. I
yeah,
was able to solve it, and I would say the only reason I was able to solve it is because I was like putting myself under stress, trying out these problems on lead code, timed problems, 30 minutes, 40 minutes. And it was only because of this sustained effort that I could actually solve those problems. So even in the company where I got a job, they also asked me to solve a coding problem. And employers, for example, can put you under pressure. They say like, okay, I have a very easy problem for you. uh, an ideal candidate should be able to solve it in less than 2 minutes. The moment they say they can solve even the problem, even if the problem is very easy, even if the logic is very simple, the moment the employer says that you have to solve it in 2 minutes, can put you under a lot of stress. And you need to be prepared for it, and the only way to do it is to actually solve problems. There are lots of resources. You have like HackerRank, Lead Code. You just pick one and stick to it. Focus on your algorithms and data structures, as Sandeep mentioned, and develop these problem solving skills under pressure is my
yeah.
recommendation.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Just I want to reiterate what Vinayak said. There are three. He mentioned three things which you can consider: Lead Code, HackerRank, and Mozilla Development Network. But again, these are not just three places where you can practice your coding interviews. You can also look for Algo Expert, or some others are there. Just Google about them. Use wherever you are comfortable, which comes into your budget and all that, and accordingly you can start coding, because it's really going to help you crack such coding interviews. That's a really great tip from you, Vinayak. I really appreciate that. So Can you tell us how was your interview experience with the employer where you got hired? How many rounds were there? What was the expectations from the employer? And what exactly they were looking from you when you were in the interview? So that would be really help for everyone to know.
Okay, so in the company where I got hired, I think I would say like the interview experience was much more simpler than in the other interviews that I did. So there was a quick tech screen in which I had a video call. Of course, like first I made the CV app, made my application where they asked that I had to send the CV along with a very detailed cover letter, and then I'll also mention like the importance of the CV and the cover letter. Uh, so in the interview, they asked, it was a short interview of 25 minutes. It was more of a tech screen. They asked me questions about clean code. They asked me questions about, OOPS, the four
Hmm.
fundamental OOP concepts. We discussed at length about a couple of design patterns, and like and they discuss these things because I'd mentioned them in my cover letter. So it's important that you actually know what you're writing. Some people, I know that they just write things for the sake of it. So I think it's important that you are very precise with the cover letter and you know exactly what you've written so you can follow it up in the interview. So we focus on these things, and and they gave me an assignment, which was the second process. And this interview process was very fast. With the employer where I got hired, everything happened like in a matter of 6 days. So there was this interview. In the evening he sent me this assignment, um, to solve over the weekend. This assignment was very interesting. They had questions on like design patterns. So they asked me to implement the singleton pattern. Okay, singleton pattern, of course, is like very easy to implement, but it was a little bit more convoluted than that. Then, like, they asked me to implement the pub sub, which is the publisher subscriber pattern, write some JavaScript code with some tests. They gave me like three non-trivial SQL questions, and as I said, I have no experience in backend development, so I had to spend like a few hours learning SQL, and then like a few hours
Hmm.
solving those problems. So I never made those complicated. I never in my work or like even in my hobby, I'd never really made those kind of complicated SQL statements. So I learned it during the interview. This is interesting because you know a lot of people might say that we do not have those skills. I learned those skills and then I did it. So he gave me the weekend. I used the weekend well, and then there were like some questions about the JavaScript event loop, which are very standard and like which everyone should be prepared if you're applying for a JavaScript developer position. And then what we did was, I submitted, and the next day they said like, we like to do an interview with you as soon as possible. Uh, and then since I was doing a lot of interviews, as I said, I had 9 interviews during that period. So I asked them to do an interview on the weekend. They agreed, and I did an interview on the weekend. And this interview is also very interesting. They dig deeper into like the Scrum methodology, clean code, design patterns, and the questions that they'd asked uh, to see if I actually knew what I was doing. And then, like at the end, they actually offered me a position during the interview itself, which was very interesting. So
Oh, nice.
this was my interview experience with the
Yeah, yeah,
current employer.
yeah.
Uh,
That's
I,
so wonderful. Yeah.
yeah.
So to just to understand correctly, so there was a 20 quick short tech interview plus intro interview of 25 minutes. That's the
Yeah.
first round. And the second round was more rigorous based on what you have mentioned, all the skills they were expecting from you, what you did over the in the those 2 days, and then you answered those questions. So in total, there were 2 rounds, and then yeah, that was the thing. But generally, that should I'm sure this was not the case with other employers. They might have 2 to 3 rounds or sometimes more. My next question is, what are the recommended job sites for the people who are applying for the jobs from India, or the people who are applying for the jobs from Germany itself, who are coming fresh out of the college or having very less experience or having some experience and applying from India? So just tell us the websites which they can use for job applications.
Okay. So, I mean, most of the job positions, like in my experience, are posted, for example, on LinkedIn, Zing, Stepstone, and Indeed.com. Uh, I personally use LinkedIn more than Zing, especially because I don't speak German, and most of the positions on Zing are always listed in German, and they have like some kind of a German requisite. But
Yeah.
like Stepstone is a very good website. It has like uh, all the positions that you're going to see on LinkedIn as well as on Zing, you'll see on Stepstone. So I like strongly recommend like getting regular notifications from Stepstone and applying to the jobs. So depending upon like what kind of jobs you've decided, they'll send you like regular emails every day, and then based on that you can start applying to the positions which are suitable to your profile.
Yeah, so here you have given a very great tip that sign up for the alerts, and then someday, let us suppose you are not applying for the job today, and then you get an email from Stepstone that this job is there. You can quickly check on your mobile if it's relevant, then at least apply for those jobs, one or two jobs. Because
Absolutely.
sooner you apply for the jobs, better you have higher chance to get shortlisted for that position. Okay, my next question is regarding the salary. So, what kind of expectations people can have in terms of salary? What kind of salary they can expect in the similar profile as yours, and especially when they have less experience, for example, 1 to 2 years.
Okay. So, well, I think this is a very subjective question, and it depends, of course, on your skill sets, your background, and like how does your interview go. Because a lot of these positions are hiring, for example, like, they hire both for the same position. They hire either a junior or like a senior developer. So but to answer your question about what could be your salary expectations for somebody with my experience, I would say you can expect something between uh, with 1 year of experience. Ideally you would expect something between, say, 42 to 55,000 euros, and most probably it's going to be between 42 and 50, because like in Germany, experience is really valued. Of course, unless you have some very special set of skills, it can be very complicated. I was very lucky and I managed to get like much more than the average, but probably that was because I had like a PhD, and the employer really valued this higher education and abstract problem solving skill. But like I would say like a good salary for a person with 1 year of experience would be around 50,000 euros.
Okay, perfect, perfect. Yeah, you said it right. And to my understanding, you have generalized it across the country. This is what I was looking for, because it's not only about Munich, it's about Berlin, it's about Frankfurt. Because on Berlin side, if you have less experience, you are coming fresh out of the college, you are right that a person might get 40 or 45,000 at max. Without no
Yeah.
experience or 1 year's experience, and for other cities, yes, it's definitely very depending on which city you are going. Can you give three suggestions to the audience to get hired fast, to get a job as soon as possible?
Three suggestions. Okay. Let me think a bit. Okay. So, like the first and the most important suggestion I'd like to give, which was really important for me, is to enjoy the process. And what do I mean by enjoying the process? Like the process of actually sending the applications, interviewing, and preparing based on the feedback you get from the interviews in which you fail. Because fail you will, with a very high probability, because you have to be very lucky to land up with the first land up a job with the first interview you do. So you should expect to have like a few interviews, and then of course you learn from the mistakes you make. So what I did was I was recording the videos and I was studying what went wrong, what questions I could not answer convincingly. So I think this is really important. Then the next thing I'd like to mention is like the CV is really important. I sent hundreds of applications with a bad CV and I got no interview calls. But then I tweaked my CV a little bit, and like based on the best recommendations I mentioned before as well. And I found out, that uh, you know everything changed. I started getting like two calls for every five applications which I would send with the new CV.
Okay.
Uh, and also the cover letter, of course, is really really important.
Hmm.
Then I'd say be patient, because if I had not been patient and if I had given up, I think I would not have landed up with this job. Like all these interviews that stacked up was only because I was applying consistently every single day, as Sandeep always recommends in his channel. And I am a big fan of his channel, and I've been following it ever since. I started looking for jobs, like my previous job actually. His channel also helped me, to be, he always talks about being proactive, and being proactive. My proactiveness helped me reach out to the employers, and helped me get my first job when I was in Bologna, and it helped me get land up with a job in Munich as well. And then, of course, do not give up, and that's one of the most important things in life as well, in general. It is hard to find a job, but not so hard if you have the right skill set and if you have the right mindset.
Oh, nice, nice. Thanks for the wonderful feedback you gave with the tips. So really, thank you for that. And yeah, so to summarize very concisely what tips you have given, first is feedback and adapt. Second is having a connecting CV and cover letter. And the third one is patience and consistencies are the keys to stay in the ground and finally win the game. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And my last question is, you already mentioned about the Conical Education. You mentioned about the learnings, patience, and consistency. So, are there any other kinds of learning you had from the channel you want to mention?
So of course, like my CV, as I said, like changing my CV was a big transformation, and like I think like I read your tips, free tips, and for me that was very very useful. Of course, like I gathered a lot of information from a lot of resources, but I would like to thank Conical Education and Sandeep in particular for the nice tips, and I think that made a big difference in converting the applications into interview calls, and of course eventually interview calls get converted into jobs. So if you don't get interview calls, then you cannot get a job. Moreover, I would say like your occasional posts on LinkedIn kept me motivated to focus on the job application process, and like keep me on track. Every time I would get distracted, like disappointed that I'm not getting interviews, I would, you would post something the next day and I would look it up and okay, let's make a few applications. And of course, like your focus on the skill sets and to present them effectively to the right people, was also very useful, because I focused a lot on the presentation part, because as I said, I just have 1 year of experience, and it's really important that how you showcase the knowledge and the information the knowledge you have was very pivotal in getting the job application.
Yeah. So thank you so much for the so wonderful feedback, and definitely it's the way you have explained to it. So definitely it's visible here that what kind of efforts you have put in your application. You showcased your profile. You have presented it very well. So there is a saying that you have to show when you want to sell something, right? You have to sell in the market where you have the buyers, right? If you want to sell apples, then you have to go to the vegetable market or fruits market. You cannot sell the apples in some other market, for example in a clothing market or somewhere else. So you have to find the right place, and then you apply to those jobs and finally get the interview calls and crack the interviews. So that's so
Absolutely.
wonderful. Yeah. So yeah, that's it for today, and I'm so happy and excited to know about your experiences. And yeah, so it's great to have you here. And yeah, thanks again for coming on the channel and sharing your ideas with everyone here. It's definitely going to help a lot of people.
Thank you, Sandeep. Thank you for this opportunity. And thank
Yeah,
you for all your nice tips for helping me land this wonderful opportunity in Munich. I hope to see you and meet you in the future.
yeah, definitely we will see each other for sure.